Hello students. So we are almost at the fag end of discussing this nature-based solutions. Today we'll be discussing the application potential for nature-based solution. And in this we will be discussing the basics, nature-based solution convergence, implementation, challenges and solutions, and we will end with good case examples. The urban ecosystem paradigm, as we do understand, the challenge is Indian cities predominantly follow the basic services based city planning model. Sanitary, drainage, water, these are the primary drivers. Rapid conveyance of wastewater and stormwater via concrete or grey infrastructure. That is the primary model now we follow. But the shift is necessary and shift is happening. Asset based engineering services are getting quite good support now from the system based NBS. I am not saying replacement, but it's a reinforcement. Nature based solutions, they position nature not as aesthetic decoration, again and again we are iterating it, but as critical infrastructure. Transition from green add ons to hybrid infrastructure. That is the shift. From standalone NBS, we are preferring now to integrated systems. And in this integration, gray and green and blue, all three will come together. The gray infrastructure, we know the functions, conveyance and structural hardness. And the positive part of it is immediately you can get the service, you can control it, and high certainty about its performance. But the limitations are single function, brittle failure, no co-benefits, and very high operational and maintenance cost. Whereas NBS is actually provide us the functions like retention, infiltration, biological treatment, and its plus points are multifunctionality, resilience, biodiversity, cooling, amenity value it can add. But again, it has its own limitation, large land requirements, slower maturation. So people have to have patience. So we are now probably in the juncture where we need to really advocate the blue, green, gray infrastructure, integrating both nature-based solution and the gray infrastructure, using gray for the peak loads management and the nature-based solution for the base flows and polishing. So the initial one which can continue and the end, and wherever there is an emergency, gray will take care of it. The spectrum of this NBS application we can find at the macro level like city or regional, like watershed management, floodplain restoration. We will be discussing this East Kolkata wetlands. Sabarmati riverfront we had already discussed. Meso, the neighborhood or district, like decentralized wastewater treatments, DWATs, lake rejuvenation, and micro site or building level, rain gardens, green roofs, permeable paving, etc. And we can do it in the campuses, in the parks, etc. The global concepts, we have seen that in India we are gradually adapting them. Spawn city of China probably have taught us to go for Amrit Sarovar, water body rejuvenation. But there is a difference because we are trying to restore the traditional tanks and stepwells as sponge elements. Singapore ABC Waters has influenced us for the River Cities Alliance, but we are trying to deal with significantly higher sewage loads, unlike Singapore, which is having very less population in comparison to India, and we are having priority on services over aesthetics. The low impact development of USA has excited us for probably the slum upgrading, DWAT system implementation, and we apply it in the informal settlements for vector control and the drainage, unlike LID at the high-end society of US. Now I will be interested to discuss with you the major three pillars of NBS infrastructure: blue-green infrastructure, environmental engineering, and ecological engineering. We have discussed them in the last three lectures. So first one has the spatial planning approach. Environmental engineering is having the engineering optimization approach. Ecological process approach we can find in ecological engineering. And their focuses are resilience and self-organization, succession, ecosystem restoration for ecological one, performance and compliance, pollution control, water quality standards for environmental one, spatial and multifunctional, blue-green spaces, connectivity, aesthetics are the primary focus of BGI. When you look at the professional capacity, who can deliver this? Actually, we need very different type of capacities. For BGI, planning or design narrative is mandatory. For environmental engineering, hydraulics, treatment, standards are important. For ecological one, ecologic and restoration, they can be the keywords. In continuation, we can also try to look at this interdisciplinary convergence. Like BGI, where? Where to do it? Environmental engineering responds to that question, how to do it, what are the treatment mechanics. Whereas ecological engineering is going to give us that support from the self-designing system, sustainable one. Why integration is necessary and not optional anymore? Because we have seen that single nature-based solution is not being able to create the system level impact, and maladaptation risk is always there. So it's always better to go for integration of all three NBS. But this will require iterative design, adaptive management, maintenance linked performance. It is no easy place in standard tendering frameworks. So people have to work harder to really implement it. And we are actually discussing that implementation potential. So how do this BGI, environmental and ecological engineering, they complement each other? We can go for very simple examples like green roofs plus wastewater filtration together takes care of decentralized multifunctional buildings, which is actually converging BGI and environmental engineering. Likewise, we can see the constructed wetland with the native vegetation, urban forest at the riparian restoration. So these are the way we can keep on thinking about this convergence more and more. BGI performance and integration pathways, we need to also look at the BGI types, which we have many. Infiltration and retention can be one target, heat mitigation can be another target, and everywhere we accordingly we integrate with the environmental engineering or the ecological engineering. Like rain gardens, ecological engineering of native plantings. Whereas bioswale, we can go for the filtration as well as vegetation, which will represent the environmental as well as ecological engineering. And we get the multiple benefits of infiltration or water retention as well as the heat mitigation. Environmental technologies, treatment and performance, you can actually look at them. That parameters like BODs, DSS, TN, and total phosphorus. Against these parameters, we check their performance, removal efficiency, compliance of respective norms like CPCB norms in this case, and the cost advantage. Planted horizontal subsurface flow constructed wetland, this is superior for nitrogen removal. Unplanted one, if you don't have plantation in that subsurface flow constructed wetland, then that is superior for phosphorus. So one is good for nitrogen, another one is good for the phosphorus. Hybrid system will maximize all the pollutants. So you go for both. The NBS convergence is going to be successful once strong policy mandate is there, boundary spanning institutional facilities are in place, performance based governance and long term monitoring and learning is in place. Implementation, the performance metrics we were discussing previously as well. If we try to see different types of performance we are trying to look at, like hydrological, ecological, or economic or social, then BGI priority, environmental engineering priority, and ecological engineering priority we have to identify. And it has to be always a multidimensional assessment framework, as it has been placed in front of you in this table. Integrated nature based solution versus the single solution approach, if you try to go for, you will find always there is an advantage of this cost benefit. You go for only gray, you get certain benefit. You go for only nature based solution like constructed wetland, you get certain co-benefits like treatment, biodiversity, carbon sequestration. You go for integrated one, NBS, BGI, and this gray. There you can find the treatment is there, biodiversity, recreation, livelihood, and climate mitigation, both the flood control as well as the carbon sequestration. And your price range is in between. So that's the way we can always find a logic that why we should go for this integrated nature based solution. So we get more than 3 to 5 co benefits we get at 15 to 20% cost of the gray infrastructure. This is from a case only, so you can look at it. Similarly, IPCC also has said the very similar thing. The 3 to 5 co benefits simultaneously we can get when we are comparing it against a single benefit gray infra. You can see those benefits which continuously we are discussing: heat, water, air, recreation, and climate, biodiversity, livelihood. These can be the options against which we can find that if we go for a integrated NBS for the water management, what additional things we are getting. Benefit can be quantified. We have already learned that quantification. Like BGI, capital and life cycle cost also can be estimated. Avoided flood damage. If I have this particular NBS in place, then what flood damage I can avoid? That will have a estimation. Energy savings, what I can gain out of this initiative. Property value appreciation, we have discussed that. And ecosystem services, pollination, predation, these are very hard to quantify, but we do understand it's having enormous value for the society. Monitoring and adaptive management, optimizing the performance, we can really question that how do we know if integrated NBS is working? Performance monitoring and what to adjust. So, monitoring is important: hydrological, environmental, socio-economic, and governance. And you can go to this sub metrics under this each one of them: hydro, environmental, socio-economic, and governance. Now I would like to discuss this technology enabled adaptive management. So we discussed the monitoring. Now we would like to see how technology can help us in this. Sensor networks, hydrological modeling. We have discussed this HEC, HMS, SWMM for pluvial and fluvial flood risk. There is a case study also, Zilin Yanzi Spawn City Design. I'll be discussing that. So we'll be finding this application of hydrological model. Citizen Science app, that is very important in today's time. Residents are now uploading the pollution sighting. They are tracking the restoration progress, participating in challenges. They are transforming the passive awareness into active stewardship, and that is very important. We had a dedicated discussion on this stewardship. Do you remember that? GIS based ecosystem service assessment, that is also another very important technology contribution. Invest, urban green index tools, these are being able to serve us because this technology is available. Life cycle assessment, which quantify environmental footprint over 20 to 50 years lifespan. I will continue the discussion on the maintenance and the performance. BGI degrades if maintenance is abundant. So it is very important to discuss this maintenance. Clogging, sedimentation, and invasive species, they reduce the effectiveness. And we can find that each BGI element, what different type of annual inspection is required, whether it is quarterly, whether like after rain, the rain garden, bioretention pond, they should be inspected. Whereas the green roof can be annual one. Routine maintenance. What are the routine maintenance? Like bioswale needs to be mowed, check dam repair, sediment removal every 6 months or so. Whereas green roof, weeding is important, mulch inspection, drainage clearance. So the each element will require their individual way of maintenance. It has to be provided accordingly. Interventions is required, replacement, excavation, those needs to be done periodically as and when required. The cost which you can find in the last column of these tables, this has come from the references only. Maybe they will not be very much valid after few years, but this gives a very good idea that what can be the when we are talking about application potential, cost becomes a very important paradigm. So here we are trying to understand if we have different type of BGI elements, what is the capex, then the operational cost and the annual maintenance and the life cycle cost. So that's the way you try to understand what this community can afford, what the government can afford. Like this, we can continue to have our design. So this particular calculation has been done based on 20-year net present value. We'll be discussing the challenges now. The first challenges now. Challenges means why BGI, environmental engineering and ecological engineering are rarely integrated in practice. We will try to understand those challenges. First one is the institutional silos. Like if I go for storm water, that will be water or sewerage board. Green space, urban local bodies, ecology, biodiversity, forest, environment, biodiversity authorities. So if you are trying to design a park, you just see how many different institutions are actually engaged in that. So no single agency who is owning the system level NBS performance. There is no single agency who has authority to approve cross-sectoral designs. This ecological one, green one cannot be getting approval from the water board. No one is accountable for long-term ecosystem performances. So this is a very important challenge. Regulatory and technical limits are there, design codes. It is not like hardcore gray engineering. So you don't have that much definitive codal provisions here. DPR templates are not available. Funding norms will always favor the gray info because hard engineering, deterministic performances, short-term compliances, that is available through the gray infra. Whereas ecological systems are probabilistic, mature over time, but they are harder to certify and ensure, and they need adaptive management. So engineers default to gray solutions with green add-ons, not the true integration. So this is another very strong challenge. Then the capacity and education gaps, I already mentioned that what different type of capacity we need to have this type of integration. Very few professionals are trained to translate ecological principles into engineered system. This cross-sectoral knowledge, that is very, very rare. Operate at multiple spatial scales, work across design, construction and maintenance cycles. The fourth challenge is again very severe one, that's the funding and procurement constraints and the timescale mismatch. Projects are evaluated before ecological functions stabilize because it takes time, leading to perceived failure and reluctance to replicate. For that only, this integration is not happening. So, equity challenge is also there. That is also another very strong barrier. Who benefits from NBS and who bears the cost? This question we raised earlier also. So I will not go into the details. So green gentrification, I hope you remember we discussed nature versus housing. It's a tug of war. What should go? Wetland shall be managed as wetland or this housing shall be accommodated. So there is also another challenge. Many a times we have seen pilot projects are successful, but scaling up is not happening. Why so? Why they fail to scale? Governance bottleneck. financial unsustainability, and technical knowledge gaps. Local contractors don't know how to build or maintain NBS. Training programs lack. Community fatigue is also another cause. Over consulted communities, they withdraw participation if benefits are not visible within 2 to 3 years. Because then they feel they have to also survive, as simple as that. And also, we can see that there can be a different way, probably, for the scaling. The strategies can be institutionalizing, monitoring, and adaptive management, permanent staff instead of consultants. That may help. Develop local supply chain, integrate into routine municipal operations, not a sudden missions. Co-benefit marketing, quantify health, economic gains, livelihood gains to build political support. Intercity learning networks, cities sharing lessons, avoiding reinventing the same wheels. This can help in scaling. Key barriers and solutions for integration. This is similar thing I am bringing from another study. So I will not be discussing everything in details, but one point which is very new, I have not discussed yet, that I will bring here. Institutional silos we discussed, knowledge gaps we discussed, financing we discussed. But the fourth barrier, land tenure insecurity, that is also one of the major challenge or barrier. So the solution probably will come from if community is protected through land rights. So land trust, recognizing the traditional stewardship rights, these can be a good way to overcome this barrier of land tenure insecurity. The design principles are important to integrate this success, and principles can be multifunctionality, connectivity, native species, and decentralization. So, whether you go for BGI, environmental engineering, and ecological engineering, when you think about integration from that particular case, you expect these type of principles. Then you go for application, and always there will be reason. Try to understand the reason. Like if I go for decentralized stormwater, then I can treat this stormwater at source, and which will reduce the burden on the centralized system. Environmental engineering, faster recovery and equity. So ecological engineering, because I am trying to get the water recharged on site. So that's the way it will help. Navigating trade offs, designing win win solutions. You cannot always be blind to the barriers or challenges. You have to understand those trade offs and try to work out of it. Like the tension can be manicured versus the wild one. If the stakeholders are different, someone will prefer, like middle class, they will be preferring the maybe the manicured one because it will help them for their jogging tracks and all this. Whereas an ecologist will really try to look for the wild one. So you have to bring a balance in that. Maybe 40% wild patches and 60% the recreational one with the manicured facilities, like that. Flood buffer housing, that is always a tension between different stakeholders like low income people and the conservationists. Restoration and fisheries in the wetland, this is always, it's a quite strong political game as well on the wetlands. So there has to be a solution where people, they will not be fully satisfied, but they will at least accept. So these trade-offs needs to be explored. We'll be discussing the case studies now very quickly because we know them, but it's very relevant to bring it here. East Kolkata wetland, the macro scale, Ramsar site, we know it's the key for the city. And just imagine 750 mld of the city wastewater, it does actually treat naturally. Solar driven symbiosis between the bacteria algae. Bacteria breaks down the waste, release the nutrients and CO2. And that actually algae is using nutrients and the CO2 and the sunlight, and they are releasing oxygen for the bacteria, fishes, and also so many vegetables are coming all around. If Kolkata is affordable, most affordable metro city in India, you cannot forget the role of this East Kolkata wetland, because that is actually supplying fresh fishes and vegetables continuously to the citizens. Research shows this East Kolkata system is 48% more efficient than conventional stabilization ponds due to active farmer management. So, this we can see here that human beings, that Anthropocene, that component is actually helping the natural system to perform better. And avoided cost, as it is really helping the Kolkata Municipal Corporation millions of rupees annually in STP, CAPEX or OPEX. And this particular wetland is helping us with the pisciculture, which is producing more than 10,000 tons of fish annually, and agriculturally it is supporting more than 1 lakh plus livelihoods. So just imagine the benefits, multiple benefits. Rapid urbanization and real estate encroachment is a real threat to this wetland. Reduction in floodwater storage capacity and food security both are declining. Macroscale NBS requires strict statutory protection to survive this urban pressure. Otherwise, East Kolkata is going to be terminally threatened. Next example I would like to bring, where we could see the application of techniques, hundreds of potential sites if you have for this NBS, whether it is BGI, environmental one or ecological one. How you can prioritize? There you can use this multi-criteria decision making system. And I have discussed this previously, so I am just bringing it again and touching the major points. You can do the suitability mapping, exclusion analysis you can do, so that you can eliminate the infeasible parcels. Then location allocation optimization you can do, you can calculate, and finally you can go for the scenario testing to understand the decision makers are actually taking the right decision. They can compare the technical, economic and environmental scenarios, and they can take the best optimum one. In the case of Ahmedabad, we have seen these multiple candidate sites where the challenge cost is lowest in one location, but water quality benefits in another location. So, which one to choose? So, this HP was done, identifying the criteria, expert survey, then calculating the weights, then scoring each site, and then the weighted sum, overall the site score. That's the way the logic was brought in using this multi-criteria GIS analysis. And then we can find this also, this case also I have discussed with you, like 120 parity corridors, network coverage is 37 square kilometer. So we could find that only 2.45% of the city area in corridors, they enabled 8.2% connected network. So strategic placement is going to have a multiplier effect. This is very important. And you can see on the right hand side table the criteria and their weight. You can really go through this particular reference in details. Next one I will be bringing, which is very known to all of us, that's a sponge city. All of us, we do now quite aware about this sponge city concept, which came from China in 2014. Now everywhere in the world, this is quite appreciated framework. It is mimicking the natural hydrological cycle: absorb, store, filter, infiltrate, reuse rainwater instead of rapid runoff. Integration across scales we have find: building scale, neighborhood scale, city scale, watershed scale. And this is very important. You cannot jump into the watershed scale until and unless you have gone through across scales. Then only it will be really effective. And in the building scale, you can go for BGI, environmental engineering or ecological engineering preferences, that is quite accepted. So this Jilin Yanzi, which I was mentioning previously, this is the specific case which I will be discussing with you, where we can find that integration of BGI, environmental and ecological engineering across the city scales. Flooding in monsoon season was the challenge, water scarcity in dry season, very, very similar to India. Limited space for traditional stormwater infrastructure. So, this design approach first gone for the hydrological modeling, green infrastructure network was designed, ecological restoration happened, public green spaces were opened so that people can also enjoy it, can own them. And decentralized systems like building scale rainwater harvesting, community scale treatment, all these things were continuously maintained. The second case study, Hebbagodi Lake from Bangalore. Here there is a 35-acre lake, eutrophic, weed infested and receiving 2 MLD sewage. It's a huge one. So CSR initiative, you remember we talked about the funding. CSR was one such funding, and in this case we can find that particular application. So Biocon Foundation, they actually took that initiative. There was a lot of, it's an environmental engineering primarily. Bioenzyme dosing was there, artificial floating islands, 12,000 square feet installation for nutrient uptake was made, mechanical aeration to restore dissolved oxygen. Hebagodi approach, that is a bioremediation approach, in situ treatment, dewatering, no dewatering required, cost effective faster implementation, and dissolved oxygen increased from 0 to more than 2.8 milligram per liter. Water pH also got balanced. And you can see in this particular case, bioremediation was applied. I will come to another wetland system example again from China, Hangzhou wetland. Ecological succession, native species, and self organization was used to create resilient, low maintenance system. Multi stage treatment wetland, subsurface flow, vertical flow. You remember plug flow plug I was discussing? Exactly same thing. Subsurface flow, vertical flow, free surface flow, floating wetland islands, and ornamental plants. And each one are having their own target performance. Like subsurface flow will remove the organic and nitrification. Biodiversity outcome of this initiative, native species, they colonize now naturally, and system resilience has increased with time, self-maintaining after 3 to 5 years. That is the beauty of any such nature-based solution. You have to give it a time, but after that when it matures, it can take care of it. So the synthesis for this integration will be something like that. It is not simply combining three approaches, but spatially multifunctional landscapes will serve for water, heat, biodiversity, livelihood simultaneously. I discussed that earlier. Targets has to be there. Temporal, adaptive management responding to climate variability, monsoon performance, ecological succession. So different season, different type of activities. Institutional, that's a very important one. We have discussed a lot. Economic, decentralized finance so that it can survive. Ecosystem service valuation, livelihood integration, all these can help in integration. Epistemic, knowledge gap is also one of the major barrier which we discussed earlier. So blending scientific knowledge with traditional ecological knowledge is very important, and especially community wisdom shall be in place. Then only it will be a successful formula for integration. So these are the references, long list of references for you. Thank you.